Alright, what's going on, my fellow Killjoys? Killjoysdrummer here, and today I'm bringing a video that I don't normally do, and this is actually whatever. I'm actually going to review the Pro Tour, the top 8 deck lists. I'm going to review them and kind of give my thoughts on the decks, and see what we can do to just kind of look over it and just kind of see how the meta has shifted. From being all about Rhino to suddenly being all about aggro. So let's go ahead and get right into it. This is the Pro Tour winning deck list. Yo Larson piloted it, so he's the one that won Pro Tour Origins. Now let's go ahead and look at the creatures. We got 4 Abbot of the Carol Keep. Now this card is just incredible. I think this card was extremely overlooked, at least by me, and definitely by a lot of the really good players in Odessa, because we are all looking over the Origins, spoilers whenever they're coming out, and Abbott was not on our list of incredible cards. Although it should have been. Now this card is the only 2-drop in the main deck of this deck. So it's a 2-mana, 2/1 with prowess, which is actually not that bad already. And whenever it enters the battlefield, exile the top card of your library, and you may play that card until end of turn. Now, it's only really bad whenever you get a Stoke or an Exquisite Firecraft off of the trigger. But for the most part, you actually will get a card you can probably cast. It's not necessarily a drop that you want to put on turn 2. It's more so a 3 or 4 drop, realistically. That way you can do this and then get value by playing another spell. Alright, so yeah, that's Abbot of the Carol Keep. It's a very nice card, and definitely a good inclusion in this deck. Easy 4 of, and the next 4 cards we're going to look at are all 1-drop creatures, because this deck tries to be as aggressive as possible. So we're going to go ahead and look at it. Fire Drinker Satyr, we got 3 in the deck. I'm not a fan of this card. I don't think it's very good, but this deck does try to be as aggressive as possible, so it needs to get as many 1-drops in there as possible, right? So Fire Drinker Satyr's 1 red for a 2/1, and that's basically all you want out of it. The other abilities are pretty irrelevant, except for the fact that it deals damage to you. Whenever Fire Drinker Satyr is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to you. And basically what that means is, let's say if someone blocks Fire Drinker Satyr, or if Fire Drinker Satyr, if Fire Drinker Satyr gets blocked, or if it blocks, let's say it blocks a Siege Rhino, not only are you taking the trample 3 damage over that, but the initial Siege Rhino did 1 damage to the Fire Drinker Satyr, so you're still going to end up taking the damage anyway. And the same goes if it gets blocked. So let's say you swing a Fire Drinker Satyr, and then I do some tricks and whatever, and then block with like a Seeker and make it prowess or whatever, deals 3 damage to the Fire Drinker Satyr, then you take 3 damage. So I think this card's really bad. And then it has Fire Breathing for 2, and then it deals 1 damage to you. So I think this card's awful. However, you just need a really solid, at least some sort of solid 1-drop that you can efficiently get damage out of. And I think the reason Foundry Street Denizen didn't make the cut is because there's not as many red creatures in this deck as there would be in other red decks before. This deck is more burn based rather than the old mono red decks that tried to go wide. So you would have Foundry Street Denizen and play Dragon Fodder and Hordling Outburst to help power out Foundry Street. So I think that's why Foundry Street didn't make the cut here. So next we have 4 Lightning Berserker. Lightning Berserker is a very good card, I think. It's a 1-drop 1/1 for 1 mana. It has Fire Breathing, and you can dash it for 1 mana. So this actually dodges sorcery speed removal such as Languish and Drown in Sorrow, and it can even trade with a Rhino if need be. This card is just really nice. It's just a really nice inclusion in this deck, and it's definitely a solid 1-drop. Now we're going to go to probably the second best 1-drop ever printed, Goblin Guide being the first. Monastery Swiftspear, 1 mana, 1/2 with haste and prowess. Now this card is played as a 4 of in every standard mono red, in every standard red aggressive deck, in every modern red aggressive deck, and every legacy aggressive red deck. At least I think it's played in Legacy. It's definitely played in Burn. But Monastery Swiftspear is just an incredible card, and there's no reason not to play 4. So now we'll go to the last creature of the deck. There's Zergo Bellstriker, 1 mana, 2/2, legendary, dash for 2, and it can't block creatures with power 2 or greater. This card is literally, the only reason it's played is for the 1 mana, 2/2. That's the whole reason it's being played. Dash late game's pretty relevant because it again dodges Drown and Sorrow and Languish, those sorcery speed removals. And yeah, so those are the creatures of the deck. It's definitely a solid creature lineup. Next, we'll go to the 4 sorceries, 4 exquisite firecraft, 3 mana, deal 4. Spell mastery, if it is triggered, then it can't be countered. So, exquisite firecraft is just incredible. It's really good against control decks because it can't be countered. For the most part, you're most likely going to have 2 instants in your graveyard by the time you use this. And it's just a very nice, very good card. I like it a lot. Yeah. So next we have 1 Fiery Impulse. Deals 2 damage to target creature. I don't really like this. Oh, well, I guess Spell Mastery, if that's triggered, it deals 3 damage instead. I don't like this as a main deck card. I definitely think it's a sideboard card, but Yo Larson did win the Pro Tour, so I would probably replace that with a 1 of Titan Strength, but that's just personal preference. 4 Lightning Strikes, just deal 3 damage for 2, instant, very good burn spell, definitely needed. Now this is interesting, 4 main deck Searing Blood, and the reason why is because no matter what deck you look at, it's probably going to run a creature that can be targeted with Searing Blood. Searing Blood can trade, or can help be a 2-for-1 against Rhinos and other things in Abzan, such as Tasigur. So Searing Blood can help with that. But it also, if you're facing Abzan control, it can hit the State of Wayfinders. If you're facing Red-Green Devotion, it can hit their Elvish Mystics. It can hit their Rattleclaw Mystics. If you're facing blue control decks, most of them are playing Jace at this point, so you can hit Jace. Or, if you're playing against a blue-black Thopter deck, you can hit a Thopter. You can hit Hangerback Walker. This card's just really good right now. And I guess, quote-unquote, sad to see it go. I don't know, because I hate being played against it, but I love playing with the card. So Searing Blood, definitely a good card, and there's no reason not to play 4 in the main. It can actually just hit pretty much everything. If you happen to face a creatureless control deck, it's the first card that comes out, so... next we got 4 Stoke the Flames, just 4 mana Convoke, deal 4. This card's just incredible. This card I actually am a little sad to see go because this is just a very standard card. And what I mean by that is it's a card that should stay in standard forever, as well as Lightning Strike. Now these cards are leaving, and I really wish that they wouldn't. I think that they should stay in the format, and I'm not even a big fan of red. I think those are just very solid standard cards. So Stoke the Flames, yeah, it's just a very nice card. 4 Wild Slash is just an upgraded Shock, essentially. If you have Ferocious triggered, then damage can't be prevented this turn, which is really nice. Which is actually really good against Turbo Fog decks if that even ever comes up. If you happen to cast enough spells and get your Swift Spirit to 4, or get your Abbot to 4, probably more relevant to get Abbot to 4, but yeah. And then the land base is 21 Mountains, so yeah, very consistent, very, very awesome deck. And yeah, let's go ahead and look at the sideboard. We got 2 Chandra Pyromaster. I think this is just for the control matchups and the Abzan matchup. This card is just a very good card. I think it's a very solid card for these mono red decks. It's part of the reason you play 21 lands rather than just 20. 3 Satyr Fire Dancer. I'm not necessarily sure why this card is being played. I never really did see Yo Larson side this in, but that's okay. That is okay. Again, he's the one that won the Pro Tour, so... you know, I have no room to talk. So yeah, next is 4 Roast. Roast just helps get rid of cards in Abzan decks, such as Rhino, Tasigur, Courser of Crufix. It's a very, very good card, and having 4 in the sideboard I think is just necessary. 4 Eidolon of the Great Revel. This card's awesome. I actually think this is main deckable, just because every deck nowadays has something that will cost 3 or less that's relevant. Abzan, almost all of its removal, almost all of the Abzan removal is 3 or less, as well as the removal in control decks, such as Hero's Downfall, Ultimate Price. Eidolon will punish them for using their removal. And so that card is just very solid. And then we have 2 Arc Lightning, which I assume is for certain aggro matchups. It's definitely for the Is It Artifact matchup, which is the deck we're about to look at next. It's a very solid card overall. So yeah, next we're going to go into the second place deck, which went to Mike Sigrist here. He ended up getting Player of the Year. Congratulations to him. Is It Artifacts? Blue, Red, and Soul Artifact is the name of the deck. I think that's a bad name. Just call it Is It Artifacts. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and look at the creatures. There's 20 creatures, plenty of creatures in this deck, all 4 ofs. You have 4 Chief of the Foundry, buffs up your artifacts, buffs up your Thopters. It's very pretty awesome card. And then Hangerback Walker. Now this card we most certainly overlooked. This started at $1.50 as the price, $1.50. It has jumped up to $17 the last time I looked at it, because this card is just absolutely incredible. I really have no idea how we overlooked this. This card is just fantastic. It just helps develop your board after a board wipe, and it's amazing. I mean, you can actually just cast it on turn 2 as a 1/1, and it's still a fantastic card. So I'm excited to see this card be a big player in Standard for the next couple of years. Or at least I think it's a couple of years, I don't know. Next is 4 Ornithopter, which is basically the star of the deck. 0 mana, 0... Well, one of the stars. There's about 3 stars, and this is one of them. 0 mana, 0/2 with flying. You can actually just put an insult artifact on it, and then it just becomes a 5/5 flyer on turn 2. You can Shrapnel Blast, sacrificing your little dirtily dude and deal 5 damage. It's just Ornithopter's definitely a big player. Phyrexian Invoker is actually a very nice card here. It's definitely nice to... it's actually, I think, necessary if you're playing this kind of deck to have 4 in the main deck. Yeah, this card is just... how would I put this? You can shut off Planeswalkers. You can shut off Mana Dorks. You can actually play... Like, let's say you're playing against Red-Green Devotion. You can actually play this card, name Sylvan Caryatid, and now their Caryatids can't tap for mana. So, same thing with Elvish Mystic. You can actually also set this down and name Elspeth Sun's Champion, and then suddenly Elspeth can't produce tokens. It can't destroy creatures. So this card's just awesome, and having 4 is a big pain, at least to other people. It's a very incredible card. Next up, we have 4 Whirler Rogue. Now, this card's really cool. This card is 4 mana for a 2/2, which is already awful. But when it enters the battlefield, you get 2 1/1 Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying, and you can tap 2 untapped artifacts you control, and the target creature can't be blocked this turn. So you can actually tap any artifact that you control. You can tap, let's say, your Springleaf Drum and your Ghostfire Blade to make your big 5/5 Ornithopter unblockable, or make your big 5/5 indestructible... What? There's no Darksteel Citadel. That's super weird. Huh. I thought there was Darksteel Citadel. That's okay. I think that's fine. That's weird. But regardless, you can just tap 2 artifacts you control to make a creature unblockable, which is just incredible. You can pile through damage, and just piling through damage is just very important for this deck. So I think this card's awesome. Usually a limited all-star, which is kind of funny, is now making an appearance in Standard. So next up is 1 Collateral Damage. This is a very interesting card. It's just another way to burn your opponent out if you really need it. It's really not bad. It's not bad at all. It's kind of like a worse Shrapnel Blast. Because most of the time with Shrapnel Blast, you're actually just sacrificing a creature. Believe it or not, you're either sacrificing a token or an Ornithopter or something of the sort. And, yeah, Collateral Damage is very nice. So yeah, Shrapnel Blast we've already gone over. It's just very nice, very powerful card. Helps you finish the game. And Stubborn Denial is very nice. Let's say they're trying to remove your big 5/5 Ornithopter with a Hero's Downfall. You're like, nope, Stubborn Denial. And Ferocious is actually triggered. They can't pay because Ornithopters are 5/5. So this just helps with countering removal. And that's basically all it's in there for. This deck also has no way to deal with... what am I thinking? Planeswalkers, God. Other than Phyrexian Invoker, this deck has a pretty hard time with Planeswalkers, so Stubborn Denial is really nice for that. Oh, I found the Darksteel Citadel. Okay, I don't know why it's under Artifact, but this is a land. So there are 21 lands in the deck. There aren't 17. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense now. So yeah, Darksteel Citadel. This is what I was trying to get at earlier. You can insult Artifact onto this Darksteel Citadel and make a 5/5 indestructible creature on turn 2. So then it can only be exiled. It's just a very powerful card, and I think very necessary in this deck. So yeah, another really powerful player in this deck is Ghostfire Blade, a 1 mana artifact, and basically you're literally only ever going to equip to artifact creatures. So the equip cost is always going to be 1, and it gives something +2/+2. That's just a very powerful effect. Springleaf Drum is a nice card because it can be sacrificed for Shrapnel Blast. It can be targeted by insult artifact, and it helps you ramp if you really need it. So it's a very nice card. So yeah, we went over Darksteel Citadel, we went over Insult Artifact. Let's go over the lands real quick. There's a 1 of Foundry of the Councils. This is really nice. If you, for some reason, with your 21 lands, get mana flooded, you can spend your mana, your 5 mana, to sacrifice this and get 2 Thopters and just help get a board presence back. So, it's a nice land. I think he would have liked to play a little more than one, at least 2. I would try to fit 2 in there, but then again, this deck's so tight, you have to try to fit everything in. 6 islands. There's one mountain and then 1 mana confluence. 4 Chivalry, 4 Temple of Epiphany. So that's the main deck. Let's go and look at the sideboard of this deck and see what he put together to see, so we have 3 Disdainful Stroke. Disdainful Stroke, just counters. This is very nice against Abzan or Control matchups, or Red-Green Devotion matchups. Anything that's going to play their bombs, that they're going to play their big spells. And Control does that a lot with Ugin. Abzan does that a lot with Rhinos and Tassigers, and then Red-Green Devotion does that a lot with Polukranos and Dragonlord Atarka. So Disdainful Stroke's a very nice card. 3 in the sideboard, definitely awesome. So Rending Volley here is very cool as well. It mostly comes in against Ojutai, but it can also be, it can also come in against Wingmate Rock. It can come in against Mantis Rider. Just any blue or white creature. It's really not bad. It's a pretty solid card for 1 mana. 3 Seismic Rupture. This is just for the mono-red matchup. This is specifically for the mono-red matchup. It just destroys their board, and you most of the time will keep yours because most of your creatures are going to be flying. It's a very nice card. There's 1 negate. Now I would usually think that there'd be more than 1 negate in these kinds of sideboards, but he built a sideboard different and only has 1 negate. The card's very, very powerful. I think this is another card that, as I talked about earlier, is just a standard card. This is probably going to stay in standard forever, which is fine. It's a very powerful card. 4 Roast, as we discussed in the previous deck, is just a very awesome card. Helps against Abzan, all that good stuff. Now, 3 Thopter Spy Network. This card is incredible against the Control matchup, against the Abzan Control matchup, against the Abzan Megamorph matchup. This card is just very powerful. Just helps with the draw and keeps a board presence going. And that's what this deck's all about. You have to have a board presence, or else the deck's just not very good. If you have nothing on board besides lands, then you're probably gonna die. That's just the way it is. And now that's kind of a weird statement, considering that can probably be the big statement of every deck. But this deck in particular just needs a board presence, just all the time. It's like a mini affinity deck, if you want to think about it that way. It's a not modern affinity deck, if you want to think about it that way. So that's why this card's important, because it keeps a board presence, and that's what this deck's all about. Next, we're going to go to the 3rd place deck, which was Paul Jackson. He got 3rd place with Red-Green Devotion. And basically the premise of this deck is to ramp a lot. You try to get as much mana going as possible and then get into your big ridiculous threats. So this is one of your big ridiculous threats, is Xenagos the Reveler. Very, very powerful planeswalker. And that ultimate is not nothing. You're going to get anything. Literally, if you use Xenagos' ultimate, you will get all 7 cards will be available to put onto the battlefield, except maybe if you get another Xenagos by chance. But for the most part, 6 or 7 cards you're going to get out of that ultimate, and making a Satyr, keeping a board presence is awesome. Adding the mana for more mana ramp is just incredible. The card's awesome. 4 Courser Crufix. I really hate this card, but I have to play it because I play Abzan. Not the aggro, but I play like a control version, and I kind of have to play it because it's necessary in those kinds of decks. It's also necessary in this deck. You play the top card of your library revealed. Basically, what this card does is it helps you dig further for spells. And if you play quite a few lands, like 24 lands seems like quite a few for this deck, even though its top end is about 7 mana. But there's so much ramp that it doesn't necessarily matter. So running Courser allows you to run 24 lands so that you won't get mana screwed in certain times. So yeah. Here's your top end of the deck. Dragonlord Atarka, 7 mana. Big flample. Flying and trample. It's a big dude. She's just an incredible dragon, and there's not much to it. It's just very powerful card. For Elvish Mystic, this card's broken in every way. And it doesn't seem like much, but this card's ridiculous. This card can help you get to 20 mana on turn 4, no joke. This card's ridiculous. But yeah, so Elvish Mystic is just really good. It's an easy 4-of, and yeah. 3 Genesis Hydra is just an awesome card, especially in these kinds of decks that can utilize that X mana cost. It's just awesome. Fantastic card. You can hit any non-land permanent. That's the big important part. 2 Nissa Vastwood Seer. I don't even think this card's necessarily needed in the deck, believe it or not. Now, I don't think it's showing the Planeswalker side. That's fine. The Planeswalker side is +1. It starts at 3 loyalty. It's +1. Reveal the top card of your library. If it's land, put it on the battlefield. If not, put it in your hand. It's -2. You put a 4/4 legendary creature onto the battlefield. And then it's -7 is untap up to 6 lands. And then those guys become 6/6 creatures, and they're still lands. So it's a very powerful card. It's not even necessary in this deck, honestly, but it's not a bad inclusion either. So definitely a solid card. 3 Polukranos World Eater. This card is awesome. 4 mana 5/5 is already really good, but that monstrosity is incredible. And especially in this kind of deck that can utilize it with the large amounts of mana that it makes. This card's just awesome. It can sometimes become a pseudo Dragon Lord Tarka, if not better. Except the flying and the trample. We're talking about the enter the battlefield effect. But the monstrosity is just incredible, and I think this card's completely worth it. This card's awesome. For Rattleclaw Mystic, more ramp. 4 Sylvan Caryatid, more ramp. And then 4 Whisperwood Elemental is just awesome, because a lot of the times with your manifest, you're probably going to get a creature. And this card's really, really nice. Helps keep a board presence, as is very important with a lot of decks. And sacrificing it to keep a board presence, like as a board wipe's happening, you can sacrifice this Whisperwood, and a lot of your face-up creatures are going to die, but you just get more of a board presence because you get all these 2/2s. So Whisperwood Elemental is really nice, and yeah, that card's pretty good. Alright, now looking at the lands, we've got 10 forests, we have 1 mountain, 4 Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, which is basically what makes this deck. It's the reason why this deck can make insurmountable amounts of mana. It's just incredible. It's a ridiculous card. 1 Rugged Highlands, 4 Temple of Abandon, and 4 Wooded Foothills. Okay, so after looking at that, let's go ahead and look at the sideboard here. We have 2 Ugin of the Spirit Dragon, and I would say this card comes in against other mid-range decks. This card, Ugin just feeds on mid-range decks. It feeds on Abzan, it feeds on Temur, it just feeds on lots of mid-range decks. And even in the mirror match, this card's ridiculous if you're playing this deck. This card feeds on Red-Green Devotion as well. It's just an awesome, awesome card, because once it comes down and wipes the board, it's very hard to come back, as it just keeps plussing and plussing and plussing. So Ugin's awesome. It's just an incredible card. 2 Guys Revenge. This card just easily comes in against control, because it's just ridiculous. Against control, I mean, it's just... The control will have if the deck is not Sultai or Abzan control, the deck will just have a ridiculously hard amount of time trying to deal with this Guy's Revenge. So 3 Nylea's Disciple. This card specifically comes in because of mono red and the artifact decks. Those really aggressive, hyper decks that just try to get in, kill you as quickly as possible. This card just kind of says nope, makes another blocker, and gains 2 life at the very least, which isn't great, but with all your mana ramp, you should probably have some more devotion to gain more life. 2 Arbor Colossus. I would say this card comes in against the dragon decks. It's a very solid card. Definitely it just destroys flying creatures, really. Becoming a 9/9 with reach is pretty ridiculous, and a 5 mana 6/6 with reach is already pretty good. So I think this card is just awesome. I'm very happy to see him put that into the deck. 3 Mistcutter Hydra. This card is also incredible against control. It's very versatile. You can make it very aggressive or win immediately late game. So the card's really cool. It's very similar to Guy's Revenge, but it's a very nice card. Finally, 3 Seismic Rupture, again against the mono red decks. This card just helps clear their board and keep yours. Your Rattleclaws and your Elvish Mystics might die, but by the time you're casting this, you're probably either not caring about your mana dorks or just so far ahead it just doesn't matter. Alright, so moving on, this was the 3rd place deck at the Pro Tour and all that good stuff. We're going to move on to the 4th place is Abzan Control. This is pretty similar to the build that I had built, except I kind of built it based around this build. So yeah, this is my build is very, very similar to Matthew Sperling's. I had a few different tweaks, but yeah, this is essentially my build, and I'll do a deck list. I'll do a deck tech probably Sunday, because it'll be a deck tech over the deck that I played at game day. So let's get into it. We got 3 Elspeth Sun's Champion. This card's just been a fantastic bomb ever since it was printed. This card's just awesome in any white-based mid-range and or control deck, so not much justification there. Ugin Spirit Dragon, we already went over this card. This card's amazing in almost every way. This card's just awesome. 4 Courser of Crufix, another card we already went over. I hate the card. It's a very good card at that, though. So 3 Den Protector, not a card we've seen yet, because I don't think there's any green except for, oh, well, I'm dumb. Red, Green, Devotion. Never mind, don't listen to me. Okay, so Den Protector, you want to morph it most of the time. Casting it face up is very bad. You want to morph it, then Mega Morph it, so it'll become a 3/2, and then whenever it turns face up, you get a card from your graveyard back into play. So it's very nice for attrition fights. Just very nice for just value. I mean, this card's just very, very good. So yeah, that's yeah, it's a solid card. Nissa Vastwood Seer, we went over this card earlier. This card's better in this deck, I feel, because the Planeswalker side's more relevant. And that's my opinion on Nissa. We got 4 Siege Rhino. This is the reason you play Abzan. This card's ridiculous. It's broken, and that's why they printed Roast. We got 1 Tasker. I've been talking about this card a few times whenever we see Roast. The card's just awesome. I mean, you can cast it from anywhere from 1 to 6 mana. Most of the time, I usually cast it from 1 to 4 mana. This card's just awesome. Yeah, I mean, having like a 1 mana 4/5 is pretty broken. So that card's awesome. 2 Languish. This deck is actually pretty solid in the fact that it'll have Siege Rhino and Tassiger surviving the Languish. And Languish will kill off a lot of the small creatures. The card's pretty solid against mono red aggro. It's not mostly what you want against it, but it's pretty solid against it. It's pretty good against artifacts. It doesn't quite kill the Ensoul artifacts, but we'll get to that later. And we have some Thoughtseize. So Thoughtseize I don't think is a very good main deck card. If you don't know what you're going into, let's say you're going to a GP and you have no idea what the meta is going to be, main decking 4 Thoughtseize is fine, because then you can figure it out. And you can sideboard Thoughtseize and sideboard out Thoughtseize in certain matchups. For me, my sideboards are in this, or my Thoughtseize are in the sideboard because I actually know the meta around my local shop, and it's not a good meta for Thoughtseize, but Thoughtseize is still very good against certain control decks. So that's my opinion on Thoughtseize. Next up, we have 4 Abzan Charm. This card's ridiculously versatile. You can put more counters on your Den Protector to make it unblockable from certain cards. You can draw 2 cards because you need the draw power. You can exile a freaking... this is what I was talking about. This is what I was talking about, how Abzan has a way to deal with Ensoul Artifact. You can just exile the creature that it's attached to, that the Ensoul Artifact is attached to. You can exile Darksteel Citadel, you can exile the Ornithopter, and then the Ensoul Artifact actually just falls off. So, this card's awesome. It's just awesome. Straight up awesome. There's no reason not to run 4. Hero's Downfall is the way this deck usually deals with Planeswalkers, and it's just nice as a removal spell for creatures. 2 Ultimate Price. It's pretty solid right now, because it actually is not completely dead in every matchup. The only matchups it's dead in are the creatureless decks, the creatureless control decks, and the Sphinx's tutelage decks. But even control decks, like I said earlier, are starting to run Jace, so you can Ultimate Price their Jace. It makes the card not completely dead in game 1. Granted, it's not good in that matchup, but it's not completely dead, and it's a pretty solid main deck card right now. Let's go ahead and quickly go over the mana base here. We got 2 Caves of Koilos, 4 Forests because Nissa, 2 Llanowar Waste, 1 Plains, 4 Sandsep Citadel, 4 Temple of Malady, 4 Temple of Silence, 1 Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, and 4 Windswept Heath. We're going to go ahead and go over the sideboard here. We have an extra Tassiger. I would say this probably comes in the mid-range and the control matchups. Maybe not the control matchups. I would say control just because you would want more threats, but Fleecebane Lion is pretty good at doing that, just being a threat. This would also come in against aggro decks, as it's a pretty solid turn 2 blocker. We have 2 Drown in Sorrow for the aggro decks again. We have 1 End Hostilities for the mid-range and the Red-Green Devotion control matchups, or not control, but red-green devotion, the mid-range matchups. We have 2 read the bones for the control matchup, the blue control matchup, just to help get that extra edge. Ultimate price against the aggro decks, 2 Jaroka's Command. This is also a way to help deal with Insult Artifact, as you can make them sacrifice an enchantment. So Jaroka's Command is pretty solid at doing that. It also comes in against other aggro decks. We have Duress, can come in against control and aggro decks, because now aggro decks are running lots of burn, so Duress to get their burn out of their hand. Freak is here to help get that life gain edge against aggro decks, and then we have the 1 Utter End. So there's Abzan control. Lastly, we're going to go over Abzan Megamorph. And the reason I say lastly is because we have another mono-red aggro deck, another mono-red aggro deck, and another blue-red Insult Artifact decks. Granted, there are a few differences in each of the decks, so we'll just quickly scan through them, but this is the actual deck, the last deck we're going to look over. 2 Elspeth Sun's Champion in this Megamorph deck. Now, Elspeth, again, we've already went over it. It's just a solid card. Course of Krufix, of course, we went over that. Now, Deathmist Raptor. This deck does run 4 Den Protector. The reason it runs Deathmist Raptor is because whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, return Deathmist Raptor from your graveyard to the battlefield face up or face down. So, basically, what you can do here, can Megamorph your Den Protector, get back a Siege Rhino, and put 2 Deathmist Raptors from your graveyard onto the battlefield. Card's ridiculous. And the reason, and it's a reason why it's still $23, I think. It's ridiculous. So yeah, 4 Den Protector, 4 Siege Rhino. We have 4 Seder Wayfinder. This is just to help filter out lands and get things in the graveyard for Den Protector, so it can target it. 2 Languish, 4 Thoughtseize. We went over these cards earlier. Just solid cards, just for a control build, really. 4 Absent Charm, went over it. 2 Downfall, 2 Ultimate Price. And now we can quickly go over the mana base real quick. There's 2 Forest, 4 Llanowar Waste, 2 Plains, 4 Stand-Up Citadel, 4 Temple of Melody, 3 Temple of Silence, 1 Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, and 4 Windswept Heath. The way I like to look at these Megamorph decks, this is essentially a control build with Deathmist Raptor, so it's kind of forced to be a little more mid-rangey. If we look at the differences, this deck is basically Sperling's control list, minus 2 lands, minus a Downfall, minus an Elspeth, minus an Ugin, and minus 3 Nissa, so you can have another Den Protector, 4 Deathmist Raptor, 4 Seder Wayfinder, things like that. So, yeah, that's kind of the way I like to look at these decks. The sideboard, we have an extra Languish. I would just say this is just for the Dragons matchup, for the aggro matchups, all that good stuff. 3 Offense of the Foremost probably comes in against aggro and control, because it's just a solid threat against control and a solid wall against aggro. 2 Nyx Fleece Ram specifically for aggro, because this card's dumb against aggro. It's just a big blocker, and you gain a life every upkeep. It's awesome. Jaroka's Command, again, just comes in against the aggro matchups, all that good stuff. Ultimate Price in the aggro matchups. Herald of Torment only comes in against the control matchups, because it's, again, another solid threat. Wingmate Rock is probably going to come in against the mid-range matchups where you want to be winning the attrition fight. And then we have One Duress. So there we go. Those are the 5 different decks in the top 8, and that's a pretty solid meta. It's kind of a lot to look out for. But suddenly, blue control decks are no longer that much of a thing. We'll have to see if those will pop up in future events, but as of this Pro Tour, blue control decks did not do that great. So we have 6th place of Stephen Neal, Red Aggro. Oh, I forgot to mention, Matt Sperling was the Abzan control, Abzan Megamorph piloted by Kentaro Yamamoto. Okay. Stephen Neal's Red Aggro deck here for 6th place. The only difference here is that it does run 2 Chandra. This card's solid. I don't fully remember the Planeswalker side, but there's always Google, right? Card seems okay, though. It's not a card I would run in this deck, because I feel like you'd rather be running other cards, but his choice, right? Now, he did decide to actually main deck the Eidolon of the Great Revels. I think it's a better call. That's just, I think it's just a solid way to go. He has a Goblin Heel Cutter. The card's pretty solid. And Lightning Berserker, all that good stuff. So, yeah, pretty basic mono-red aggro deck. This, he actually does have Outpost Siege, Molten Vortex for the long game, just because you know that's going to happen. You have 3 Thunderbreak Regent, an extra mountain for whenever you're going to side in, I suppose, the Thunderbreak and the Outpost Siege. This sideboard's actually just very different from the other sideboard. He even has 2 Harness by Force, which is just hilarious. There's Magma Spray, Scouring Sands, pretty solid sideboard, I would say. Now, Pat Cox here, he got 7th place with Mono Red Aggro. Now, his difference is he runs a Titan Strength instead of the Fiery Impulse. He runs one less Mountain, and he runs Goblin Heel Cutter and Goblin Glory Chaser, and main decks the add-on of the Great Rebels. Sideboard, Goblin Heel Cutters here. We have Scab, Clan, Berserker, 1 Chandra, 2 Outpost Siege, 2 Scouring, 2 Magma Spray, 4 Roast. So, solid deck. I like it a lot. Now, Steven Beria, he ran the Is It Artifacts deck. The difference here is that he only ran 3 Phyrexian Revoker and ran 3 Pia and Kiran Nalar. Yeah. And only ran 2 Whirler Rogue and 4 Thopter Engineer. So, kind of a more aggressive way to look at it, I would say. And more consistent to go with 4 Springleaf Drum. So overall, this was the top 8 of the Pro Tour. What do you guys think about these kinds of videos for me doing? Just kind of going over certain events and explaining my thoughts and opinions on it. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.